Good evening, everyone. Andy Moss here for TradingAdventures.com and a brief look at the weekly charts. Thank you for hanging around until Sunday evening for this. It's been a little warmer and sunny outside this week, which is a change from the recent weather. So took a chance to get out and enjoy it as much as possible. So here's the SPX, and not a lot of excitement here this week as we looked at the daily chart. This was a pretty steady decline from this high back on December 11th. It came down, it dipped well below the rising 50-day moving average and then closed the week above the 8 and 21 day. So it's back over all the key moving averages and holding up fairly well. So back to the weekly here, we can see this, kind of a hammer. It's not really a hammer because this wasn't a pronounced decline here, but the long lower shadow on this candle this week showing the recovery there. So Q's kind of the same situation here with a little bit of a deeper move and back up and into this back over these moving averages here. So nice recovery there. DIA, not quite the recovery that we saw in SPYs and Qs. You can see that noted by the very short lower shadow here, but it had been much stronger leading up to this. So not a surprise there on the Qs and the small caps, kind of a mixture of SPYs and DIA. Long lower shadow, recovery above a 4-week moving average, and really trying to hold this recent breakout level pretty well. So nothing really concerning there on a weekly chart on the small caps as well. Moving to the rest of the world, ACWX here, this is all of the major markets minus the United States. Similar look to the small caps, kind of trying to hold this breakout level here. This was the previous high close that it took a little time to get back above, but it's back below now, but holding the moving averages there. China's been sliding a bit and coming down here and testing its rising 40-week moving average, but holding this pivot area here. We saw this little consolidation give way to the downside. I don't know that we want to call that a breakdown, but it did resolve lower and holding this trend line, which has been in place since the January 24 low. So that's a pretty good support level so far on FXI and China, and this long lower shadow here is trying to hold that up. We'll see how that progresses into the slow week. Bonds, the aggregate bond index, still stuck. We've been watching this for 3 weeks now, stuck below this slightly declining 10-week moving average, and here's the 4-week moving average coming down. It's right around the center of the Bollinger Bands, which are getting tight, and the RSI is holding just above the 50% level here. So not a breakdown in bonds, but it is having a consolidation, a little bit of a rest period here. We'll have to see how that resolves. A trip down this trend line here, and the 40-week moving average is not out of the question there if rates continue to rise, pushing bond prices lower. TLT, a little bit more of a decline here, and below this pivot area that we looked at 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and below all the moving averages in the lower half of the Bollinger Bands, and with RSI in the lower half of the range up here coming into the end of the week there at 45. So this looks like it might have some continued ability down to get maybe into the 85 to 86 range on TLT. High yield bonds just kind of hanging around right here, just basically flat for the last 4 weeks and holding this pivot area, which is technically at $80.37, but in the lower half of the bands, which are getting tighter. RSI is holding in the middle of the range there, and volume is pretty much average there on the high yield bond index. Over to look at the dollar. The dollar got rejected up here pretty good and came back down, and kind of like stocks, it had a long lower shadow and got a bit of recovery here. So flat center of the Bollinger Bands, which are also flat, and just kind of holding steady there. So not a whole lot of action in the dollar. It could go either way from here. Bitcoin and crypto continues to look really heavy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks down now below this anchor from back in August of 24, and not in a hurry to get and stay above. The lower Bollinger Bands are coming down. The 10 weeks coming down. The 50 week is flat. RSI is low but not oversold. This looks like the odds favor further downside for Bitcoin, and I know this is a level that's probably on a lot of people's radars. This 74,420, which is the pivot low from back in April, certainly seems like a reasonable possibility for Bitcoin. Commodities just can't get and stay above this level. There's really not much more else to say there. We've been watching this play out for a long time now this year and not moving very far. Precious metals as a combination, continuing the breakout here, strong moves, and we can see that in GLD and silver. GLD both back above, making a new closing high above all the key moving averages, continuing to make progress higher. Silver, SLV, just an impeccable move here. Just 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks gapping higher and just reaching new heights over and over again. It is quite a bit oversold. Overbought. Overbought can stay overbought. Maybe it takes a rest after this tremendous run. Certainly wouldn't be surprising, but very strong so far on silver. And notice the volume on SLV down here, just well above average for the last 3 weeks in a row. Sleepy and declining, so not a lot to shake up asset prices here from a volatility standpoint. And now we'll look at some relative strength measures. Here is here's the relative strength chart, growth versus value. We're starting to see growth pick up a little steam, found some support in kind of this area here and bounced back. No trend change yet, but this is early indication of support, and we continue to swing a little bit back in growth favor. Notice it's holding the RSI level here very well on this bounce, so that's something to monitor going into the week. To gain over staples, back over the moving averages, and continuing back into the higher reaches of the upper half of the Bollinger Bands here after testing the center line for a couple of weeks. So that is gaining risk appetite there. High beta versus low volatility. This has been up at a high level for a while as we continue to see an appetite for risk, even with the market pulling back a little bit. And again, very long lower shadow here on this candle. It did come down and test this 4-week moving average, but back up into a new high close on this chart. And that's about it for relative strength. If we look at the nice consolidation, and I'm not going to do it, but if you pull up a chart of Apple and Google and some of the stronger Mag 7 names, you can see this play out. They don't all look like this. NVIDIA is better, but a little weaker, and Microsoft certainly has been testing some support levels, and it rebounded a bit this week. And look at the percentage of S&P stocks above a 50 and 200-day moving average. The 50-day really holding flat here for several weeks now. The 200-day is not as flat, but holding up fairly well. No surprises there as we see prices consolidate a little bit. So certainly, above the 50% line, things are healthy. They're not necessarily exciting, but certainly not breaking down and showing any large cause for concern either. Calendar. We've got a little bit of economic data coming this week, but it's really going to be a pretty light and quiet week. The market closes at 1 o'clock on Wednesday, Christmas Eve, and then, of course, closed all day Thursday, December 25th, for the Christmas holiday, and Friday will be an all-day session, but I would expect very light volume, very quiet action, really not a lot to do, and I think that probably holds over for most of the week as people and traders are away and celebrating and spending time with family and on holiday and all that kind of stuff. So that's it for this very brief look at the weekly charts. I just don't, there's not a lot and not a lot of exciting price action. and shaping up to look at what should be a pretty quiet week. So I hope you all have a great holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all of the above, and have a great time. And we will see what happens this week and take another look over the weekend.